The dust devils danced across the main street of Bitter Creek, Wyoming territory, carrying with them the scent of sagebrush and the unspoken promises of the untamed West. It was the autumn of 1882, and the town had seen better days. The gold rush had come and gone, leaving behind weathered storefronts and hardened souls who'd learned that fortune was as fickle as a prairie wind. From the window of the Imperial Hotel, Samuel Sam McKenna watched the street below with eyes that had once commanded respect and fear in equal measure. Now, those steel-gray eyes held something else entirely, a bitter resignation that seemed to age him beyond his 35 years. His strong jaw, shadowed by 3 days' worth of stubble, clenched as a group of cowboys rode past, their laughter cutting through the afternoon air like shards of broken glass. 6 months. It had been 6 months since the accident that had stolen his leg's strength and, with it, his identity. The memories haunted him still, the lightning strike that spooked his prize stallion. Thunder, the sickening crack as he hit the rocky outcrop. The endless hours of agony before his ranch hands found him. The doctor from Denver had been brutally honest. The damage to his spine meant he'd likely never walk again, certainly never ride. Sam shifted in his wheelchair, a contraption of wood and iron that felt more like a prison than a means of mobility. His once powerful frame, built by years of breaking horses and working cattle, had already begun to show signs of wasting. The bottle of whiskey on the side table called to him, promising temporary oblivion from the shame that gnawed at his gut like a starving coyote. The McKenna Ranch sprawled across 15,000 acres of prime grazing land, backed against the foothills of the Rocky Mountains. It was an empire built on sweat, blood, and an iron will, his father's legacy, expanded threefold under Sam's management. Now, he couldn't even mount a horse to survey what was his. The irony wasn't lost on him. He owned more land than most men could ride across in a day. Yet he was trapped in 2 small rooms of a hotel, dependent on others for the simplest tasks. A knock at the door interrupted his brooding. "Come," he growled, not bothering to turn from the window. Tom Garrett, his foreman for the past decade, entered with his hat in his hands. The older man's weathered face showed the strain of recent months. "Sam, we need to talk about hiring someone for the house. Maria left last week, said she couldn't manage alone no more. What with the cooking and cleaning and—" Tom's voice trailed off, both men understanding the unspoken rest and taking care of you. "Hire whoever you need," Sam said flatly. "Just make sure they understand the job and don't ask questions." Tom nodded, fidgeting with his hat brim. "Already got someone in mind. Young woman from the edge of town, looking for work. Name's Clara Walsh. She's got good references from the minister's wife." Sam's jaw tightened. The last thing he needed was some chattering girl filling his home with forced cheerfulness. But the practicalities couldn't be ignored. "Fine. When can she start?" "Tomorrow, if you're agreeable. Well, she needs the work pretty bad. Sam, got family depending on her." "I said fine," Sam repeated, his tone ending the conversation. Tom left quietly, understanding the dismissal. The next morning brought Clara Walsh to the McKenna Ranch. She arrived before dawn, walking the 3 miles from town because she couldn't afford the hired wagon. The ranch house loomed before her in the gray pre-dawn light, a 2-story structure of imported lumber and local stone that spoke of prosperity and permanence. Despite its grandeur, there was something forlorn about it, as if the house itself mourned its master's condition. Clara paused at the gate, adjusting her simple calico dress and checking that her dark hair was still properly pinned beneath her bonnet. At 23, she'd already known her share of hardship. Her father had died in a mining accident when she was 15, leaving her mother with 6 children to feed. As the eldest, Clara had worked wherever she could teaching school when they'd let her, taking in washing, mending, anything honest that would put food on the table. She'd heard the stories about Sam McKenna, of course. Everyone in Bitter Creek had. How he'd been the fastest gun in 3 counties, how he'd built his fortune through sheer determination and business acumen, how women from Denver to San Francisco had tried to capture his heart, and now, how he'd become a bitter recluse, drinking himself into an early grave behind the walls of his ranch. Taking a deep breath, Clara walked up the path and knocked on the heavy oak door. Tom Garrett answered, relief evident on his face when he saw her. "Miss Walsh, thank you for coming. Let me show you around and explain your duties." The house was everything Clara had imagined, and more fine furniture shipped from back east, paintings on the walls, carpets that her feet sank into. But there was dust on the mantelpieces, and the curtains hung heavy with neglect. The kitchen, which should have been the heart of such a home, felt cold and abandoned. "Mr. McKenna takes his meals in his study," Tom explained, leading her down a hallway. "He prefers not to be disturbed more than necessary. You'll prepare 3 meals a day. Keep the house clean. Manage the laundry. The ranch hands take their meals in the bunkhouse. So you're only cooking for one." They paused before a closed door at the end of the hall. Tom knocked, waited for the gruff response, then opened it. Clara's first glimpse of Sam McKenna made her heart skip, not from attraction, though he was still devastatingly handsome despite his condition, but from the sheer force of misery that radiated from him. He sat behind a massive desk, papers scattered before him, a glass of whiskey already at his elbow despite the early hour. His eyes, when they flickered over her, were cold as winter frost. "Mr. McKenna, this is Miss Clara Walsh, the new housekeeper." Sam barely glanced at her. "Miss Walsh," he acknowledged with a slight nod. "Tom will explain your duties. I expect meals on time, the house maintained, and above all, privacy. Is that clear?" "Yes, sir," Clara replied, her voice steady despite the rudeness of his reception. "Good. Then we understand each other." He turned back to his papers, dismissing them both. As Tom led her back to the kitchen, Clara felt a mixture of emotions: sympathy for a man so obviously in pain, frustration at his coldness, and determination to do her job well regardless. She needed this position too badly to let his attitude drive her away. The first week tested every ounce of Clara's patience. Sam McKenna was a difficult employer by any standard. He complained about the food too hot, too cold, too seasoned, too bland. He refused to let her clean his study while he was there, which was always. He drank steadily from morning until he passed out at night, and the empty bottles accumulated like shameful secrets. But Clara noticed things: how his hands shook when the pain was bad, how he sometimes stared out the window at the corrals where his horses used to run, how he kept a photograph on his desk, a woman with kind eyes and a gentle smile turned face down more often than not. She began to adapt. She learned he preferred simple foods, reminiscent of trail cooking. She discovered if she hummed softly while working, he didn't complain as much. She started leaving small wildflower arrangements on the hall table, and though he never acknowledged them, they were never thrown away. The breaking point came 10 days into her employment. Clara arrived to find Sam on the floor of his study, having fallen from his wheelchair trying to reach a book from a high shelf. His face was twisted in pain and humiliation, and when she rushed to help, he lashed out. "Don't touch me," he snarled. Get out, damn you!" But Clara didn't leave. Instead, she knelt beside him, her voice calm despite her racing heart. "Mr. McKenna, you're hurt. Please let me help you back to your chair." "I said get out." His voice broke on the words, and she saw then what lay beneath the anger: a man drowning in his own despair, fighting anyone who might throw him a line. "No," she said simply. "I won't leave you on the floor." Their eyes met. His wild with pain and rage, hers steady with quiet determination. Something shifted in that moment. Some small crack in the wall he'd built around himself. He looked away first. "Fine," he ground out, "but be quick about it." The photograph lay face down on Sam McKenna's desk, as it had for months now. But on this cold November morning, As Clara dusted the study while he dozed fitfully in his chair, she accidentally knocked it over. The image that stared back at her was of a young woman with gentle eyes and wheat-colored hair, standing beside a younger, vibrant Sam McKenna. They were both laughing at something beyond the camera's view, their happiness frozen in silver and light. Her name was Elizabeth. Clara startled, nearly dropping the photograph. Sam's eyes were open, watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "I'm sorry, Mr. McKenna. I didn't mean to—" "She died 3 years ago," he continued, as if she hadn't spoken. "Cholera outbreak. Took her and half the town that summer." His voice was flat, emotionless, but his knuckles were white where they gripped the arms of his wheelchair. Clara carefully placed the photograph back on the desk, this time face up. "She was very beautiful." "She was everything," Sam corrected, then seemed to catch himself. The familiar scowl returned. "That'll be all. Miss Walsh?" But something had shifted. Over the following days, Sam began to talk not much, just fragments of memory that escaped when his guard was down. Clara learned he'd met Elizabeth at a church social in Denver. She'd been a schoolteacher, the daughter of a minister, far too good for a rough cowboy who'd made his fortune in cattle and land speculation. But she'd loved him anyway, seeing past the gunfighter reputation to the man underneath. They'd had 2 years together, 2 years of building the ranch house to her specifications, of planning for children who would run through its halls, of dreams as vast as the Wyoming sky. Then the cholera came, swift and merciless. Sam had been away, negotiating a cattle contract in Cheyenne. By the time he returned, she was already in the ground. "I should have been here," he said one evening, staring at the photograph while Clara served his dinner. "Should have died with her, or instead of her. Would have been more fitting." Clara set down the tray with more force than necessary. "That's foolish talk, Mr. McKenna." His head snapped up, eyes flashing. "What did you say?" "I said it's foolish," she repeated, meeting his glare steadily. "You think Mrs. McKenna would want you drinking yourself to death. You think she'd be proud to see you like this." "How dare you?" "My father died in a mine collapse," Clara interrupted, her own pain lending steel to her voice. "Left my mother with 6 children and no means to feed them. You think he wanted that, you think any of us wanted that. But death doesn't ask our permission. Mr. McKenna, it just comes. The question is, what we do with the life we're left with." Sam's face had gone pale, then flushed with anger. "Get out," he said quietly, dangerously. Clara lifted her chin. "I'll be back in the morning to make your breakfast. Try not to fall out of your chair again tonight." She left before he could respond, her heart hammering. She fully expected to find Tom Garrett waiting on her doorstep come dawn, telling her she was dismissed. But the night passed quietly, and when she arrived at the ranch the next morning, Sam was in his study as always. "Eggs," he said without looking up from his ledger. "Scrambled. And coffee, strong." It was as close to an apology as she was likely to get. As November gave way to December, Clara began to piece together more of Sam's history. The ranch hands, initially suspicious of her, gradually warmed up when they saw she wasn't another temporary hire who'd flee at the first sign of their boss's temper. Jake Morrison, a grizzled cowpoke who'd ridden with Sam for 15 years, told her stories during the brief moments when she'd bring coffee to the barn. "You should have seen him in his prime. Miss Clara," Jake said, rolling a cigarette with practiced ease. "Could rope a calf at full gallop, shoot a playing card edge-on at 30 paces. But it wasn't just the physical stuff. He had a mind for business like nothing I've ever seen. Knew which lands to buy, which cattle to breed, how to negotiate contracts that left everyone feeling like they'd won." "What happened after his wife died?" Clara asked. Jake's expression darkened. "He went a little crazy. Truth be told, started taking risks no sane man would take. Rode into situations that should have killed him a dozen times over. It was like he was daring God to finish the job. Then came the accident, and he shrugged. Well, you see what's left. Clara did see. She saw a man who had lost his heart 3 years ago and his body 6 months past, who was drowning in the space between what was and what should have been. But she also saw glimpses of who he'd been sharp intelligence when he reviewed the ranch accounts, flashes of humor when caught off guard, a deep love for the land that showed in how he stared out at the mountains. The ranch itself was a marvel, 15,000 acres of prime grassland, natural springs that never ran dry, sheltered valleys perfect for wintering cattle. Sam had built it into an empire through shrewd purchases and careful management. Even now, confined to his chair, he tracked every detail: which pastures were being grazed, which cows were breeding, what repairs were needed where. "We're losing the north pasture fence to rust," he said one morning, scanning a report from Tom. "Tell Garrett to replace it before the spring drives start." "Why don't you tell him yourself?" Clara suggested, pouring his coffee. "He's just outside." Sam's jaw tightened. "I conduct business from here." "The hands would like to see you." She pressed gently. "Jake Morrison asked after you just yesterday." "Jake Morrison works for me. He doesn't need to see me to collect his pay." Clara recognized the wall going up and retreated, but she filed the information away. Another piece of the puzzle that was Sam McKenna. The truth was, the ranch was suffering from his absence. Not financially, Sam's mind was still sharp when it came to numbers and contracts, but morale was low. The hands missed their boss's direct leadership, his presence during roundups and brandings. They did their work, but the heart had gone out of it. Clara saw it in how they talked about the old days, always in past tense. She heard it in their voices when they asked Tom Garrett for orders instead of riding up to the big house like they used to. The McKenna ranch was still profitable, still respected, but it was becoming a body without a soul. One evening, as she served dinner, Clara found Sam staring at a map spread across his desk. It showed the full extent of his holdings, marked with his own notations, water sources, grazing areas, property lines. His fingers traced the boundaries with something approaching reverence. "My father started with 600 acres, he said quietly. "Fought Indians, rustlers, and nature itself to hold on to them. I promised him I'd build something lasting." His hand clenched into a fist. "And now I can't even ride my own land." "You can still run it," Clara pointed out. "Your mind works fine, Mr. McKenna. Better than fine." He laughed bitterly. "A ranch is more than ledgers and contracts, Miss Walsh. It's sweat and blood, horses and rope. It's being there when a calf is born breech, or when wolves threaten the herd. It's—" He stopped, shaking his head. "What would you know about it?" "I know that giving up dishonors everything you've built," she said quietly, "and everyone who helped you build it." He looked at her then, really looked at her. And for a moment she saw past the anger to the fear beneath. Fear of being truly helpless, of becoming a burden, of watching his life's work crumble while he sat trapped in a chair. Then the moment passed, and the familiar scowl returned. "That's enough philosophy for one evening. Miss Walsh, you may go." But that night, for the first time since she'd arrived, Sam didn't drink himself into unconsciousness. Clara found the whiskey bottle still half full when she cleaned up the next morning, and counted it as a small victory. The first snow came early that year, blanketing the ranch in pristine white. Clara arrived to find Sam at the window, watching the hands move cattle to sheltered areas. His expression was unguarded, full of longing and loss. When he sensed her presence, he didn't turn away as usual. "I used to love the first snow," he said. "Elizabeth and I would ride out to Shepherd's Point and watch it fall over the valley. She said it was like God was giving the world a clean slate." Clara moved to stand beside him, careful not to crowd. "It's still beautiful." "Beauty doesn't mean much when you can't be part of it," he replied. But there was less bitterness in his voice than usual, more sadness. She wanted to tell him that he was wrong, that beauty existed regardless of our ability to touch it. But she'd learned that Sam McKenna didn't respond well to platitudes. Instead, she said, "The coffee's ready, and I made those biscuits you didn't complain about last week." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "The ones that were only slightly worse than hardtack." "Those very ones." He turned his chair from the window, and she saw him wince at the movement. The pain was getting worse as winter set in, though he'd die before admitting it. Clara made a mental note to add more willow bark tea to his evening routine, disguised in something he'd actually drink. As she set out his breakfast, Sam surprised her with a question. "Where did you learn to cook, Miss Walsh, not from your mother? I'd wager, given your unique approach to seasoning." It was the closest he'd come to making a joke, and Clara felt oddly pleased. "I taught myself, mostly. When you have 6 mouths to feed and barely enough for 2, you learn to be creative." "And your family, they're still in town." "My mother takes in washing, my youngest brother, Timothy. He's 12 now and good with numbers. I've been saving to send him to school properly." She caught herself, embarrassed at sharing so much. "I'm sorry, you didn't ask for my life story." "No," Sam said slowly. "I didn't, but it's instructive to know that I'm not the only one with burdens to bear." The blizzard struck without warning on a Tuesday evening in late December. Clara had stayed later than usual, preparing meals that could be easily reheated, sensing the storm in the way the horses grew restless and the air turned sharp as broken glass. She was banking the kitchen stove when the wind hit the house like a physical blow, rattling windows and sending snow horizontal past the glass. "Miss Walsh?" Sam's voice carried from the study, urgent in a way she'd never heard before. She found him at the window, his face grim. "You can't walk back to town in this. You'll have to stay." Clara's heart sank. Her mother would worry, but Sam was right. She could already barely see the barn through the swirling white. "I'll bed down in the kitchen, near the stove." "Don't be foolish. There are 6 empty bedrooms upstairs. Take whichever suits you." He paused, something almost like concern crossing his features. "Can you manage the fires through the night if they go out?" "I'll manage," Clara assured him. What she didn't say was that she'd kept her family warm through worse winters with less resources. At least here there was plenty of wood and a solid roof overhead. The storm raged for 3 days. 3 days where the outside world ceased to exist, where the ranch became an island in a sea of white fury. Clara moved through the house like a ghost, keeping fires burning, preparing simple meals from the pantry stores, checking on Sam more frequently than he'd usually tolerate. By the second night, she found him shivering in his study despite the roaring fire, his body betraying him in ways that had nothing to do with his paralysis. The fever had come on suddenly, turning his skin clammy and his eyes glassy. "Just need another blanket," he muttered through chattering teeth. Clara felt his forehead and bit back a curse. "You need more than that. We have to get you to bed." "I'm fine here." "No, you're not." She'd nursed her siblings through enough illnesses to know when someone was in real danger. "Mr. McKenna, please. I can't lift you alone, but if you help me..." Whether it was the fever weakening his stubborn pride or the genuine fear in her voice, Sam nodded. The journey from study to his ground-floor bedroom was a torturous process of Clara supporting his weight while he used what little strength remained in his legs. By the time they reached the bed, both were sweating despite the cold. For 2 days and nights, Clara fought for Sam McKenna's life. The fever raged like the storm outside, sending him into delirium where he called for Elizabeth, for his father, for forgiveness from ghosts only he could see. Clara bathed his burning skin with cool water, forced willow bark tea between his lips, and kept vigil through the dark hours when his breathing grew shallow and labored. "Don't you dare die on me," she whispered fiercely during the worst of it, when his lips had turned blue and his pulse fluttered weakly under her fingers. Don't you dare give up now. Sam McKenna, not like this. In his delirium, the walls came down completely. He talked about the war fragments of memory from his youth when he'd ridden with the Texas Rangers. He spoke of the first man he'd killed, how it had changed something fundamental inside him. He described meeting Elizabeth, how her laugh had made him believe he could be more than a gunfighter with fast hands and a faster temper. Promised her children, he mumbled, tears sliding down his fevered cheeks. Sons to ride the land, daughters with her smile. Failed her, failed everyone. Clara held his hand through it all, offering what comfort she could. When the fever finally broke on the third morning, she was exhausted beyond measure but triumphant. Sam's eyes, when they opened, were clear for the first time in days. "Miss Walsh," his voice was barely a whisper. "The storm." "Passing," she told him. "Like your fever. You've been very sick." He tried to process this, his brow furrowing. "You stayed. Where would I go in a blizzard?" She tried for lightness, but couldn't quite manage it. The fear was still too fresh. "Besides, someone had to keep you from dying out of sheer stubbornness." Something shifted in his expression, surprise, perhaps, or recognition. "Thank you," he said simply, and Clara knew what those two words cost him. The storm broke that afternoon, leaving the world transformed. Drifts reached the first-floor windows in places, and the barn was half buried. Tom Garrett and the hands dug their way to the house, relief evident on their weathered faces when Clara met them at the door. "The boss?" Tom asked anxiously. "Recovering," Clara told him. "He had a fever, but it's passed. He'll need rest and proper food for a few days." Tom's respect for her, already growing, solidified in that moment. "You saved his life, miss." "I did what anyone would do." "No," Tom disagreed quietly. "You did what needed doing. That's different." The aftermath of the storm revealed more than just snow damage. A section of the barn roof had partially collapsed under the weight, and they'd lost several cattle who'd wandered from shelter. But worse was the discovery Jake Morrison made while checking the herd's wolf tracks. Lots of them, circling the winter pastures. Packs moved down from the mountains. Jake reported to Tom in the kitchen, not knowing Sam could hear from his bedroom. "Probably driven by the storm. They're testing the fences, looking for weakness." "Double the night watches," Tom decided, "and keep the pregnant cows close to the barn." "We need more than that," Jake argued. "We need someone who can track them back to their den, take out the leaders. Otherwise, we'll be losing cattle all winter." Clara saw Sam's door close quietly and knew he'd heard every word. She found him later at his desk, staring at nothing, his hands clenched in his lap. "A good rancher protects his herd," he said without preamble. "That's the first rule my father taught me, and now I can't even sit a horse to check the fences." "There are other ways to protect what's yours," Clara said carefully. "Are there? Should I hire someone else to do what I should be doing, pay another man to ride my land, shoot my enemies, be what I'm supposed to be?" The bitterness was back, sharper than ever after the vulnerability of his illness. That night, Clara was awakened by howling long, mournful calls that seemed to come from every direction. She rose and went to the window, seeing nothing but moonlight on snow. But somewhere out there, death circled on four legs, patient and hungry. She found Sam in his study, fully dressed and staring out at the night. His rifle lay across his lap, a gesture both futile and heartbreaking. "They're testing," he said quietly, "seeing how close they can come. By tomorrow night, they'll be among the cattle." "The hands will handle it," Clara said. "The hands will try, but wolves are smart. They'll split the pack, create diversions, go after the weakest." He trailed off, his expertise in stark contrast to his helplessness. "I should be out there." Clara moved closer, close enough to see the moon reflected in his eyes. "Tell me what you'd do, if you were out there." He looked at her in surprise. "What?" You know these wolves, this land. Tell me what you do, and I'll tell Tom Garrett. Let your knowledge protect the herd, even if your body can't." For a long moment, Sam was silent. Then, slowly, he began to speak. He described wolf behavior, hunting patterns, likely den sites based on terrain. He outlined a strategy where to position shooters, how to use fire and noise to drive the pack away from the cattle, when to pursue and when to defend. Clara listened intently, asking questions, making him clarify points. When he finished, she nodded. "I'll tell Tom first thing in the morning." "He won't listen to you. You're just the housekeeper." "Then I'll make him listen." There was steel in her voice that made Sam look at her anew. "Your body may be broken, Mr. McKenna, but your mind isn't. The ranch needs both." The next night, Tom Garrett positioned his men exactly as Sam had suggested. When the wolves came, they found no easy pickings. The pack lost 2 members to rifle fire and retreated to the mountains. Discouraged by the organized resistance, the cattle were saved. Jake Morrison summed it up the next morning. "It was like the boss was right there, telling us what to do. How did Garrett know to put men at Cougar Point? That's exactly where they tried to flank us." Clara said nothing, but when she brought Sam his breakfast, she found him at the window with something approaching peace on his face. "They did well," he said quietly. "You did well," she corrected. "The strategy was yours." He turned to look at her, and for the first time since she'd met him, there was something like hope in his eyes. Perhaps there are other ways to run a ranch." "I've been telling you that for weeks," Clara said with a small smile. "Yes," Sam acknowledged, his own mouth quirking slightly. "You have—" That morning, for the first time, he asked her to bring Tom Garrett to the study. The foreman entered nervously, hat in hand, but left with a grin and detailed instructions for the winter operations. Word spread quickly through the bunkhouse the boss was back. Maybe not in body, but certainly in spirit. Clara watched it all with quiet satisfaction. The wolves had been driven off, but more importantly, Sam McKenna had found a reason to fight again. It wasn't the life he'd planned, but it was life nonetheless, and that was a start. The man who rode into Bitter Creek that February morning was everything Sam McKenna had once been tall in the saddle. Prosperous, radiating the kind of confidence that came from never meeting a challenge he couldn't overcome. Theodore Theo Blackwood owned the second largest ranch in the territory, and he had his eye on making it the first. Clara first saw him when she was in town buying supplies. He touched the brim of his expensive hat as she passed, his smile showing too many teeth. "You're the Walsh girl," he said, blocking her path with practiced ease. "The one working for McKenna." "I am," Clara replied carefully, sensing danger in his too friendly manner. "Shame about Sam," Blackwood continued, his gray eyes cold despite his sympathetic tone. "Man like that, reduced to—" He made a vague gesture. "Well, it's a tragedy. I've been thinking maybe I could help him out, take some of that burden off his shoulders." "Mr. McKenna manages his affairs quite well," Clara said firmly. Blackwood's smile widened. "Does he now? From what I hear, he can't even manage to leave his study. But perhaps you'd know better than most." The insinuation in his voice made Clara's skin crawl. "You might mention to Sam that I'm always willing to make a fair offer, more than fair, given his circumstances." Clara pushed past him without responding, but she could feel his eyes following her all the way down the street. Back at the ranch, she found Sam reviewing contracts with unusual intensity. He looked up when she entered, noting her flushed cheeks and tight expression. "What is it?" he asked. Clara hesitated, then told him about the encounter. Sam's face darkened with each word, his hands clenching on the arms of his wheelchair. "Blackwood," he said, the name like a curse. "I should have known he'd circle like a buzzard. He's been after my northern water rights for years." He seemed very confident. Clara ventured. Sam laughed bitterly. Of course he is. He smells weakness. A crippled rancher who can't defend what's his, it's everything a man like Blackwood dreams of. He slammed his fist on the desk. And he's not wrong, is he? How can I stand against him when I can't even stand? The same way you stood against the wolves, Clara said quietly. With your mind, with help. But this time, Sam shook his head. Wolves are simple predators. Miss Walsh, men like Blackwood, they're something else entirely. Over the following weeks, Blackwood's campaign began in earnest. First came the friendly visits from his men to the McKenna ranch hands, buying drinks in town, dropping hints about better wages and steady work at the Blackwood spread. Then came the accidents, fences cut in the night, water holes mysteriously fouled, prime cattle disappearing only to turn up on disputed range. Tom Garrett brought each incident to Sam, his weathered face growing more concerned. The boys are getting nervous. Boss, Blackwood's offering top dollar for experienced hands. And with things like they are. You mean with me like I am, Sam finished harshly. Tom shifted uncomfortably. That's not what I... It's exactly what you meant. And you're not wrong. Sam stared at his useless legs with naked hatred. A year ago, I'd have ridden to Blackwood's ranch and settled this man to man. Now I'm just an invalid he can pick apart at his leisure. The tension in the house grew thick as winter fog. Clara watched Sam retreat further into himself, the brief hope sparked by the wolf incident fading like morning frost. He began refusing meals again, and the whiskey bottle made its reappearance on his desk. Then came the night that changed everything. Clara was preparing to leave when she heard horses approaching, too many horses for a social call. Through the window, she saw Blackwood himself, flanked by 6 of his men, all armed. Sam, Blackwood called out, his voice carrying clearly. Come out and talk like civilized men, or are you too proud to show your face, even to an old neighbor? Clara started for the door, but Sam's voice stopped her. Stay inside, he ordered, then louder, through the window. State your business, Blackwood. Business is exactly what I've come about, Blackwood replied, dismounting with casual arrogance. I'm prepared to make you a generous offer. Your northern section, 10,000 acres, including the water rights, I'll pay twice what it's worth. It's not for sale. Everything's for sale, Sam. Just a matter of price. And let's be honest, what good is land you can't ride? What good is a ranch you can't work? Clara saw Sam's knuckles go white on his chair arms. Get off my property. Blackwood laughed. Your property. How do you figure to keep it? Sam, your men are already looking elsewhere. Your fences are failing. Soon enough, your cattle will start dying or disappearing. Face facts, you're done. I'm offering you a way out with dignity. I said get off my land. Or what? Blackwood's voice turned ugly. You'll roll out here and face me. You'll strap on that famous gun of yours and show me what the great Sam McKenna is made of. He paused, letting the cruelty sink in. You're nothing now. Just a cripple waiting to die. Take my offer while you still can. The silence stretched taut as a hangman's rope. Then Clara heard Sam's wheelchair moving. Before she could react, he was at the door, pushing it open with trembling hands. Sam, no, she breathed, but he was already rolling onto the porch. The sight of him clearly shocked Blackwood's men. Even in his chair, even broken, Sam McKenna carried an aura of danger. His eyes were cold as winter stars, and his hand rested near the gun still holstered at his side. Theodore Blackwood, Sam said, his voice carrying the authority of the man he'd been. You're trespassing. You have 10 seconds to get off my land before I forget I'm civilized. Blackwood recovered quickly, smirking. You gonna shoot us all from that chair? Sam, your days of intimidating people are over. Maybe, Sam acknowledged. But I can still put a bullet between your eyes before your men clear leather. Want to bet your life on a cripple's reflexes? The 2 men stared at each other, and Clara held her breath. She saw Blackwood's hand twitch toward his gun, saw Sam's eyes narrow in anticipation. Then one of Blackwood's men spoke up nervously. "Boss, maybe we should go. It is his land." Blackwood's face flushed with rage, but he stepped back. "This isn't over, McKenna. You can't hold what you can't defend. Sooner or later, you'll see reason, or you'll see worse." They rode off in a cloud of dust and threats, leaving Sam slumped in his chair on the porch. Clara rushed to him, finding his hands shaking with reaction. "You could have been killed," she said, surprised by the fear in her voice. "Maybe that would have been better," he replied quietly. "At least it would have been an end with some dignity." "Stop it!" Clara snapped, her fear converting to anger. "Stop talking like you're already dead. You faced him down. You protected what's yours. For now. But he's right. Clara, I can't—" He stopped, realizing he'd used her first name. "I apologize. Miss Walsh." "Clara is fine," she said softly. "And you can defend this ranch. Just not alone." That night, word spread quickly through the territory about the confrontation. Jake Morrison summed up the bunkhouse sentiment. "The boss may be in a chair, but he's still got sand. Did you see Blackwood's face when Mr. McKenna went for that door? Thought he was looking at a ghost." But Clara knew the victory was temporary. Blackwood would be back, and next time he might not come for talk. She found Sam in his study late that night, stone sober and writing letters with determined strokes. "What are you doing?" "Writing to some old friends," he said without looking up. "Men who remember when my word meant something. Maybe a few will still answer the call. You're preparing for a war. Blackwood declared war the moment he set foot on my land." Sam finally met her eyes. "The question is whether I can fight it from this chair." "You won't be fighting alone," Clara said firmly. Sam studied her for a long moment. "Why?" he asked finally. "Why do you care what happens to me or this ranch? You could work elsewhere, somewhere easier, for someone who isn't—" "Broken," Clara supplied when he trailed off. "You're not broken. Sam McKenna, bent, maybe wounded. Certainly, but not broken. And as for why—" She paused, choosing her words carefully. "Maybe because I've seen what you could be again. Maybe because this ranch and the people on it deserve better than to be picked apart by vultures. Or maybe just because it's right." Sam was quiet for so long, Clara thought he wouldn't respond. Then, softly, "Elizabeth would have liked you. She had that same stubborn streak when it came to lost causes." "You're not a lost cause," Clara insisted. "No," Sam gestured at his useless legs, at the wheelchair that confined him. "Then what am I?" "A man who needs to remember how to fight with more than his body." Clara said, "A man who built an empire with his mind as much as his muscles. That man is still in there. Sam, he just needs to find his way out." Later, as Clara prepared to leave, she found Sam had wheeled himself to the window. He was watching the night sky, where storm clouds gathered on the horizon. "There's weather coming," he said. "Bad weather. Blackwood will use it. Try to catch us when we're vulnerable." "Then we'll be ready," Clara said simply. Sam turned to look at her, and for the first time in months, there was something like determination in his eyes. "Yes," he agreed. "We will." The morning Clara found Sam on the floor of his bedroom. She knew something had to change. He'd tried to reach his boots, the ones he'd worn every day before the accident, and had fallen hard, reopening the wounds on his palms from dragging himself across the floor. "Don't," he warned as she knelt beside him. But his voice lacked its usual venom. He looked exhausted, defeated, older than his years. "I won't leave you on the floor," Clara said firmly, just as she had that first time. But now her hands were gentler, more familiar with the weight of him, the way his body tensed with pain. Once she'd helped him back to his chair, she didn't leave as expected. Instead, she pulled up a stool and faced him squarely. "We need to talk about your legs." Sam's jaw clenched. "There's nothing to discuss. They're useless. End of story." The doctor said the spine wasn't severed. Clara pressed. He said there was a chance. A chance? Sam laughed bitterly. He said I might get some feeling back. Might. And that was 8 months ago. Nothing's changed. Because you haven't tried. The words hung in the air like a challenge. You've been so busy mourning what you lost that you haven't fought for what you might regain. His eyes flashed dangerously. You think I haven't tried those first weeks? I tried everything. The pain was... He stopped, his breathing harsh. It was like being torn apart from the inside. And for what my legs are dead weight, accept it, like I have. But Clara had noticed things. The way his foot sometimes twitched when he thought no one was looking. How he'd winced when she'd accidentally bumped his knee, suggesting sensation where there should be none. She'd helped care for a neighbor's son who'd injured his back in a fall, watched him slowly regain movement through exercises that seemed like torture. What if I helped? She offered quietly. What if we tried together? Why? The question was raw, vulnerable. Why do you care so much? Clara considered her words carefully. Because I've watched you give up on yourself. And it's wrong. Because this ranch, these people, they need their leader back, not just his mind, but his spirit. And because... She hesitated, then forged ahead. Because I care about you. Sam McKenna. More than I should. More than is proper. The silence stretched between them. Heavy with unspoken truths. Finally. Sam looked away. Even if I wanted to try, I don't know how. I don't know if I have the strength to fail again. Then we'll start small. Clara said, just movements, stretches. If nothing comes of it, at least you'll know you tried. But if there's even a chance... That afternoon, they began. Clara had spoken with Doc Harlan in town, gathering what information she could about exercises for paralyzed limbs. The old doctor had been skeptical but provided some guidance, warning her about the risk of false hope. The first session was a disaster. Sam's pride battled with his vulnerability as Clara manipulated his legs through basic movements. The pain, dormant for months, roared back to life. "Stop!" he gasped after barely 5 minutes, sweat beading on his forehead. "Just stop!" But Clara returned the next day, and the next. Gradually, Sam stopped fighting her. They developed a routine mornings before the ranch business began, when the house was quiet and Sam's defenses were lowest. Clara would help him transfer to a padded table Tom Garrett had built, and they would work through the exercises with grim determination. The pain was constant, sometimes overwhelming. More than once, Sam broke down, cursing his useless body, cursing Clara for making him hope. But she weathered his storms with quiet patience, her hands steady and sure as she worked his muscles, keeping them from complete atrophy. "Tell me about the first horse you broke," she said one morning, trying to distract him from a particularly painful stretch. Through gritted teeth, Sam spoke of a wild Mustang his father had captured. "Took me 3 weeks. He threw me 17 times, cracked 2 ribs, broke my wrist. Father said I was a fool to keep trying." "But you didn't stop." "No." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Stubborn even then. Finally rode him on a Sunday morning. Whole town came out to watch. Best feeling in the world. Earning that horse's trust." "This is the same," Clara said softly, working his ankle through a rotation that made him hiss. "You are breaking your body back to trust. It just takes time." Weeks passed with agonizing slowness. Some days, Sam could swear he felt something a tingle, a flash of heat. Other days, there was nothing but dead weight and despair. Clara never wavered, arriving each morning with fresh determination. One evening, as she prepared to leave, Sam caught her hand. "Why don't you have a family of your own?" he asked suddenly. "A woman like you should have a husband, children." Clara's cheeks colored. "There was someone once, before my father died. But when times got hard, He decided I came with too many burdens. She shrugged, aiming for lightness. Perhaps he was right. He was a fool, Sam said fiercely. Any man who couldn't see your worth doesn't deserve you. Their eyes met and held, the air between them charged with possibility. Then Clara gently pulled her hand free. I should go. Same time tomorrow. But tomorrow brought a breakthrough that changed everything. They were working through the usual routine when Sam suddenly gasped, not in pain, but in shock. What is it? Clara asked anxiously. My foot, he whispered. When you bent it just then, I felt, Clara, I felt it. Her hands trembled as she repeated the movement. Sam's whole body went rigid, his eyes wide. There, he breathed. It's like pins and needles, but it's there. It's real. Clara felt tears prick her eyes. Try to move it. Just try. Sam's face contorted with effort, every muscle straining. For long moments, nothing happened. Then, barely perceptible but undeniable, his toe flexed. The sound Sam made was somewhere between a laugh and a sob. Clara found herself crying openly, not caring about propriety or professional distance, after months of work, of pain, of doubt movement. It's just a toe, Sam said, but his voice was full of wonder. It's a beginning, Clara corrected, wiping her eyes. If you can move a toe, you can move a foot. If you can move a foot. I might walk again. The words were barely a whisper, as if speaking them too loudly might break the spell. That night, Sam insisted Clara stay for dinner. They ate in his study, but for the first time, the atmosphere was light, hopeful. Sam even laughed, really laughed at a story Clara told about her youngest brother's attempt to ride a pig. I'd forgotten what that felt like, he admitted as the evening wore on. Not just the movement, but hope. I'd forgotten hope. Don't forget it again, Clara said softly. No matter how hard this gets, and it will get harder, hold on to this feeling. Sam reached across the table, covering her hand with his. I'm beginning to think God sent you to save me, Clara Walsh. Not just my body, but my soul. Maybe he sent us to save each other, Clara suggested, turning her hand to interlace their fingers. The moment stretched, full of promise and possibility. Then a knock at the door shattered it. Tom Garrett entered, his face grim. Boss, riders coming. Blackwood's men, by the look of them. Sam's hand tightened on Clara's before releasing it. How many? 8, maybe 10. They're not trying to hide their approach. Get the men ready, Sam ordered, already wheeling toward his gun cabinet. But no one shoots unless they draw first. Clara, I want you. I'm staying, she interrupted. We face this together. Remember? Sam looked like he wanted to argue, but something in her expression stopped him. Together, then. He agreed. As they prepared for whatever Blackwood had planned, Clara saw Sam flex his toe again, as if reassuring himself the movement was real. It was such a small thing, barely noticeable, but it was proof that miracles could happen, that broken things could heal. Now they just had to survive long enough to see how far that healing could go. The transformation began slowly, like spring creeping across the Wyoming plains. Each morning brought new challenges as Sam pushed his body to remember what it had forgotten. The toe movement had progressed to his ankle, then gradually up his leg. But progress came at a price every gain was paid for in sweat and agony. Again, Sam gritted out. Gripping the parallel bars Tom Garrett had constructed in the largest room of the house. His arms trembled with the effort of supporting his weight while Clara guided his legs through the walking motion. You've been at it for 2 hours. Clara protested. You need rest. Blackwood won't rest, Sam replied, forcing his right foot forward an inch. Every day I stay in that chair is another day he plots against us. It had been 6 weeks since that night Blackwood's men had ridden up only to deliver a legal summons. The territorial judge would hear Blackwood's claim that Sam had abandoned certain water rights through non-use. The hearing was set for summer. giving Sam precious time, but also a deadline. The law says I have to be physically present at the hearing, Sam had explained. If I can't make it to the courthouse in Cheyenne, I forfeit by default. Blackwood knows I haven't left this ranch in 9 months. Now, watching him struggle to stand, Clara understood his desperation. It wasn't just about walking, it was about saving everything he'd built. She moved to support him as his knees buckled, and for a moment they stood pressed together, his weight against her. "I've got you," she murmured, feeling his heart race against her palm. "I know," he replied, and she knew he meant more than just this moment. The work continued relentlessly. Sam's determination was fierce, almost frightening. He pushed through pain that would have broken most men, driven by fury and hope in equal measure. The ranch hands began to notice, catching glimpses of their boss actually standing through the windows. Word spread through the territory like wildfire. Sam McKenna was fighting back. One afternoon, Clara arrived to find Sam had managed to walk shuffle, really from his bedroom to the study alone. He was slumped in his chair, exhausted but triumphant. 27 steps, he announced. Counted every one. "That's wonderful," Clara beamed, then noticed blood seeping through his sock. "Sam, your foot—" "It's nothing. Rubbed it raw on the brace." He waved off her concern, but she was already kneeling, carefully removing his boot. "This isn't nothing," she scolded, examining the angry blisters. "You're pushing too hard. I'm running out of time." "You're no good to anyone if you cripple yourself permanently trying to heal." She fetched her medical supplies, gentle as she cleaned and bandaged the wounds. Rome wasn't built in a day. Rome wasn't in danger of being stolen by Theodore Blackwood, Sam countered, but he submitted to her ministrations. As she worked, Clara became acutely aware of their proximity, of the intimacy of the moment. When she glanced up, she found Sam watching her with an expression that made her breath catch. "Clara," he said softly, "these past months, I don't know how to thank you." "I don't want thanks," she replied, focusing on the bandage to avoid his eyes. "What do you want?" The question hung between them, loaded with possibility. Clara's hand stilled. What did she want? To see him whole again? Yes, to save the ranch. Certainly, but beneath that, "I want you to stop seeing yourself as less than you are," she said finally. "I want you to realize that your worth isn't measured in how fast you can draw a gun or how well you sit a horse. And if I never ride again, if the best I can manage is limping around like an old man." Clara met his gaze squarely. "Then you'll be a man who fought through hell and survived. That's worth more than all the quick draws in the West." Something shifted in Sam's expression, walls coming down, defenses crumbling. He reached out, cupping her face with one calloused hand. "What did I do to deserve you?" "You lived," Clara whispered. "That's enough." The kiss was inevitable, soft and desperate and full of months of unspoken longing. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. "I'm still broken," Sam warned. "I may never be the man I was." "I don't want the man you were," Clara said firmly. "I want the man you're becoming." Their growing closeness didn't go unnoticed. Tom Garrett saw it in the way Sam's face lit up when Clara arrived each morning. The ranch hands noticed how their boss had stopped barking orders and started leading again, even from his chair. And in town, gossip flew about the Walsh girl who'd worked a miracle on the bitter cripple of the McKenna ranch. But not everyone was pleased. Blackwood heard the rumors and came calling on a day when Clara was in town. He found Sam in the front room, standing between the parallel bars. "Well, well," Blackwood drawled, not bothering to knock. "The great Sam McKenna, reduced to a child learning to walk." Sam didn't flinch. "Get out of my house." "Just came to see the miracle everyone's talking about." Blackwood circled like a predator. "Must be quite a woman. That housekeeper of yours got you up and moving again. Wonder what other services she provides." The insult hit its mark, but Sam controlled his rage. "Say what you came to say and leave." "Fair enough." Blackwood's false friendliness vanished. "I'm offering you one last chance. Sell me the northern water rights, and I'll drop the legal claim. You can keep your ranch, your dignity, and your nurse. Otherwise, I'll see you in court. And we both know you won't make it to Cheyenne." "I'll be there," Sam stated flatly. Blackwood laughed. "Look at you. You can barely stand. You think you can travel 200 miles, sit through a hearing, you'll collapse before you reach the city limits?" "Then I'll collapse, but I'll be there." "Pride always was your weakness." "McKenna." Blackwood moved toward the door, then turned back. "That girl's made you soft, made you think you're more than you are. When you fail, and you will remember I offered you a way out." After he left, Sam sank onto a bench, shaking with fury and exertion. That's how Clara found him an hour later. "What happened?" she asked, alarmed by his pallor. Sam told her about Blackwood's visit. His fists clenched. "He's right about one thing. I don't know if I can make it to Cheyenne." "Then we'll make sure you can." Clara said simply. "How long do we have?" 10 weeks. "Then we have 10 weeks to get you strong enough, not just to walk, but to ride if necessary." She paused, studying him. "Can you do it? Can you push through whatever it takes?" Sam thought of Blackwood's smirk, of the ranch his father had built, of the woman standing before him with fire in her eyes. "With you beside me, I can do anything." The new regimen was brutal. In addition to walking exercises, Sam began rebuilding his overall strength. Clara researched techniques, consulted with Doc Harlan, even wrote to a specialist in Denver. She became an expert in massage, in recognizing the difference between good pain and dangerous pain, in knowing when to push and when to rest. Sam responded by working harder than ever. He progressed from the parallel bars to crutches, from shuffling to actual steps. The first time he made it around the entire house. Clara and half the ranch hands cheered. "It's not enough," Sam said that night, frustrated by his slow pace. "At this rate, it'll take me a month to reach Cheyenne." "Then we'll plan for that." Clara said, "We'll take a wagon, make stops. There's no shame in accepting your limitations while working to overcome them. Blackwood will. Blackwood will do what he does regardless." Clara interrupted. "Your job is to get strong enough to face him. Let me worry about the rest." "You shouldn't have to, Sam." She took his hands, feeling the calluses from gripping the crutches. "We're in this together. Your fight is my fight now." He pulled her close, resting his forehead against hers. "I love you," he said quietly. "I should have said it sooner. Should have said it the moment you refused to leave me on that floor, but I love you, Clara Walsh." "I love you too," she whispered back, stubborn pride and all. They held each other in the fading light, two souls who'd found strength in shared struggle outside. The ranch continued its evening routine, cattle lowing, horses nickering, men calling to each other as they finished the day's work. It was a world worth fighting for, worth any pain or sacrifice. "Show me the new exercises," Sam said finally. "If I'm going to face Blackwood in court, I want to walk in on my own feet. No crutches, no help. I want him to see that Sam McKenna doesn't stay down." Clara smiled, pride and love warming her chest. "Then let's get to work. We have a ranch to save." The night came wrapped in darkness thick as wool, with clouds masking the stars and a tension in the air that made the horses restless. Clara had stayed late, helping Sam with evening exercises, when Jake Morrison burst through the door. "Boss, they're here Blackwood's men. At least 15 of them, moving toward the main gate." Sam was on his feet immediately, reaching for his gun belt with movement still stiff but determined. "Armed!" "To the teeth, and they've got torches." Clara's blood ran cold. Fire was every rancher's nightmare. One spark in the wrong place could destroy everything. "Get everyone to defensive positions," Sam ordered. his voice carrying the authority of old. "But no one fires first. We're not giving Blackwood legal excuse to claim self-defense." "Sam, you can't," Clara began, but he was already moving, using his cane but walking under his own power toward the door. "I can and I will," he said firmly. "This is my ranch. I'll defend it." Tom Garrett appeared with Sam's rifle and a grim expression. "The boys are ready, boss. Say the word. Remember, we hold unless they attack first." Sam checked his revolver. Muscle memory, overcoming physical limitations. "Clara, I need you to—" "I'm staying right here," she interrupted, picking up the shotgun Tom had taught her to use. "We discussed this." Their eyes met, a whole conversation in a glance. Sam nodded once. "Then stay behind cover." They emerged onto the porch as Blackwood's men spread out in a semicircle beyond the gate. The torches they carried cast dancing shadows, making it hard to count exact numbers. Then Blackwood himself rode forward, staying just outside easy gun range. "Evening." "Sam," he called out, voice carrying clearly. "Heard you've been practicing your walking. Thought I'd come see the miracle myself." "State your business or get off my land. Blackwood—" "My business," Blackwood laughed. "I'm here to make you one final offer. See, I've been patient. Tried to do this the civilized way. But you're too proud to see sense. So here's the new deal: you sign over those water rights tonight, or things get unpleasant." "The court will decide." "The court?" Blackwood spat. "You really think you'll make it to Cheyenne a cripple traveling 200 miles? Even if you try, accidents happen on the trail. Wheels break, horses spook, men get robbed." The threat was clear. Sam stepped forward, and Clara saw the effort it cost him to hide his limp. "You're talking about attacking a civilian convoy. That's a hanging offense." "Who said anything about attacking? I'm just pointing out the dangers of travel." Blackwood's smile was visible even in the torchlight. "But we can avoid all that unpleasantness. Sign the papers I've brought, and everyone goes home safe." "Go to hell." Blackwood's expression hardened. "Wrong answer." He raised his hand, and his men moved closer, tightening the semicircle. "You've got good men, Sam, but they're outnumbered, and that fancy house of yours wood burns real easy." Clara felt Sam tense beside her. The threat to the ranch house, Elizabeth's house, hit deep, but his voice remained steady. "The first man who lights anything burns with it." Big talk from a man who can barely stand. Blackwood leaned forward in his saddle. "But maybe we're approaching this wrong. Maybe it's not your property I should be threatening." His eyes found Clara in the shadows, and his smile turned predatory. "The Walsh family lives in that shack on Elm Street. Doesn't it, mother and 5 young ones? Terrible how fires start in those old tinder boxes, especially when everyone's asleep." Clara's world tilted. Beside her, Sam went rigid with fury. "You threaten them, and I'll kill you myself," Sam said, his voice deadly quiet. "Chair or no chair, I'll find a way." "Then be reasonable," Blackwood snarled. "Sign the papers." The moment stretched taut as a bowstring. Clara's hands tightened on the shotgun, her mind racing. Her family, her innocent family, drawn into this because of her. She started to step forward, ready to offer herself if it would keep them safe. But Sam's hand caught her arm. "Blackwood," Sam called out, and something in his tone made everyone freeze. "You want those water rights so bad? Then let's settle this like men. You and me. Right here, right now." Blackwood laughed incredulously. "A gunfight? You can barely walk. Then it should be easy for you." Sam stepped forward again, this time not hiding his limp. Unless Theodore Blackwood is afraid to face a cripple. The challenge hung in the air. Clara saw Blackwood's men shift uneasily. Honor still meant something in the West, even among hired guns. To refuse would brand Blackwood a coward. "Sam, no," Clara whispered urgently. But Sam's eyes never left Blackwood. "You win. You get the water rights. I win. You leave my land and never come back. And regardless, The Walsh family stays out of it. Blackwood dismounted slowly, handing his torch to one of his men. You're a fool, McKenna, but if you want to die on your feet instead of in your chair, I'll oblige. They faced each other in the flickering torchlight, Blackwood healthy and confident, Sam leaning heavily on his cane. It seemed impossibly unfair. Suicide rather than a duel. But Clara had seen Sam practicing, working to adapt his legendary speed to his new limitations. He'd made her time him over and over, adjusting his draw to work while seated or supported. Clara, move back, Sam said quietly. Sam, please, trust me. She retreated to the porch, her heart hammering. The ranch hands lined up along the fence, weapons ready but held. Blackwood's men did the same. It was like something out of the old days, two men settling their differences with lead and courage. Whenever you're ready, cripple, Blackwood taunted, hand hovering over his gun. Sam let his cane fall, standing on his own power. His right hand hung loose at his side, inches from his holster. The pain must have been excruciating, but his face showed only calm focus. You sure you want to do this? Theo, Sam asked. You could still ride away. Draw, damn you! The moment exploded into motion. Blackwood's hand dove for his gun, fast as a striking snake, but Sam's arm moved with the muscle memory of 20 years, the hours of adapted practice paying off. His draw was different, economical, using his body's pivot to compensate for his limited mobility. 2 shots cracked almost as one. Blackwood's bullet whined past Sam's ear, close enough to clip hair. Sam's shot took Blackwood in the shoulder, spinning him around and dropping him to the dirt. His gun flew from nerveless fingers. For a heartbeat, nobody moved. Then Blackwood's men started forward, hands reaching for weapons. Hold, Sam commanded, his gun still out and rock steady despite the tremor Clara could see in his legs. Your boss is alive. Take him and go. Now. Tom Garrett and the ranch hands had their rifles up, ready to back their boss's play. The moment balanced on a knife's edge. Then Jake Morrison spoke up. You heard Mr. McKenna. Show's over. Take your boss and get. Slowly, reluctantly, 2 of Blackwood's men moved to help their wounded employer. Blackwood was conscious, clutching his bleeding shoulder and staring at Sam with disbelief. How? He gasped. You can barely stand. I can stand enough, Sam replied, and I'll be standing in that Cheyenne courthouse, too. Count on it. They loaded Blackwood onto his horse, his men mounting up around him. As they prepared to leave, Blackwood managed one last threat. This isn't over. McKenna. Yes, Sam said firmly. It is. Come near my land or threaten anyone under my protection again, and next time I won't aim for your shoulder. They watched the riders disappear into the darkness. Only when the last torch vanished did Sam's strength fail. His knees buckled, and he would have fallen if Clara hadn't rushed forward to catch him. I've got you, she murmured, taking his weight. Around them. The ranch hands were cheering, slapping each other's backs, marveling at what they'd witnessed. Did you see that draw? Jake was saying. Faster than most men with 2 good legs. But Clara only had eyes for Sam, who was white as paper and shaking with reaction. That was insane, she scolded as she helped him inside. You could have been killed. Had to be done, he gasped, letting her ease him into a chair. Couldn't let him threaten you, your family. My family wasn't worth your life. Sam caught her hands, holding tight despite his trembling. Your family, you, this ranch, the men who depend on me, all worth fighting for, all worth dying for if necessary. Clara felt tears sting her eyes. You impossible man. But I'm your impossible man, he said with a weak smile. If you'll have me. Before she could respond, Tom Garrett burst in. Boss, rider coming fast from town. It's Doc Harlan. The doctor arrived breathless, his horse lathered. Sam, thank God you're alive. I was at the saloon when Blackwood's men brought him in. He's screaming about attempted murder, demanding the sheriff arrest you." "Let him demand," Sam said tiredly. 20 men saw him draw first. "That's not what worries me," Doc Harlan said. "It's what he said about the trial. He's got Judge Hartley in his pocket, bought and paid for, even if you make it to Cheyenne. The verdict's already decided." The victory turned to ash. After everything, the months of work, the pain, tonight's confrontation to lose in a rigged court. "Then we'll find another way," Clara said firmly. "There has to be evidence of the bribery, witnesses, something." Sam squeezed her hands, drawing strength from her determination. "Doc, can you find out more carefully?" "I'll do what I can." The doctor looked between them, noting their joined hands with a small smile. "Seems like more than your legs are healing. Sam, about time." After he left, Clara helped Sam to his bedroom. As she tended the various pains the night's exertion had caused, he watched her with soft eyes. "You can walk again," he said quietly, echoing her words from the damp rag she pressed to his forehead. "That's what you'll whisper to me one day when this is all over. When I'm really whole again." "You're already whole," Clara whispered back, kissing his forehead. "You stood against evil tonight. You protected what you love. The walking is just geography." But as she held him while he drifted toward exhausted sleep, Clara's mind raced. The physical battle was won, but the legal war still loomed. Somewhere out there was the key to stopping Blackwood permanently. She just had to find it before the trial date arrived. The courthouse in Cheyenne stood like a monument to justice, its limestone facade gleaming in the summer sun. But as Clara helped Sam from the wagon after their 3-day journey, she knew that justice and law didn't always walk hand in hand. Sam stood carefully, using his walking stick but determined to enter the building under his own power. He'd improved remarkably in the weeks since the confrontation with Blackwood, able to walk for longer periods, though still with a pronounced limp. The journey had been hard on him, but he'd refused to show weakness. "Remember what we discussed?" Clara murmured as they climbed the steps, Tom Garrett and Jake Morrison flanking them. "No matter what happens in there, we tell the truth," Sam finished, "and trust that right will prevail." But they both knew it might not be enough. Doc Harlan's investigation had confirmed their worst fears. Judge Hartley had received substantial campaign contributions from Blackwood's associates. The legal deck was stacked against them. Inside, the courtroom was already packed. Word had spread about the showdown between Sam McKenna and Theodore Blackwood, drawing spectators from across the territory. Blackwood sat at the plaintiff's table, his arm still in a sling from the gunshot, wearing the expression of a man who'd already won. As Sam made his way to the defendant's table, a murmur ran through the crowd. Many hadn't seen him since the accident, and his appearance walking wounded but walking nonetheless caused a stir. "All rise for the Honorable Judge Hartley," the bailiff announced. The judge who entered was a thin man with cold eyes and an imperious manner. He barely glanced at Sam's side of the room before beginning proceedings. What followed was a travesty of justice. Every objection from Sam's lawyer was overruled. Every piece of evidence showing Sam's continuous use of the water rights was dismissed on technicalities. Witnesses who'd seen Blackwood's men destroying fences and fouling water holes were declared unreliable. By noon, Clara could see the writing on the wall. Sam sat rigid beside his lawyer, his knuckles white as he gripped his cane. The ranch hands in the gallery grew increasingly restless as the unfairness became blatant. Then, just as Blackwood's lawyer was making his closing argument, the courtroom doors burst open. A woman strode in, middle-aged, well-dressed, with an air of authority that made everyone turn. "Your Honor," she announced, "I have evidence relevant to this case." Judge Hartley's face darkened. "This is highly irregular. You can't simply—" "I'm Mrs. Catherine Blackwood," the woman continued, causing gasps throughout the room. "Theodore's wife, And I have documents that prove my husband's systematic campaign to steal the McKenna water rights through fraud and intimidation. Blackwood shot to his feet. Catherine, what are you doing? She faced him with quiet dignity. What I should have done years ago. I'm telling the truth. What followed was extraordinary. Catherine Blackwood produced letters, ledgers, even signed affidavits from men Blackwood had hired to harass Sam's ranch. She detailed the bribes, the threats, the planned accidents that would have befallen Sam on the trail if he'd traveled alone. Why? The judge asked, clearly shaken. Why betray your own husband? Catherine's eyes found Clara in the gallery. Because I watched this young woman fight to heal a broken man, while my husband tried to break him further. Because I remember when Theodore was a good man, before greed consumed him. And because... She took a deep breath. Because 20 years ago, Sam McKenna saved my life. Another gasp from the crowd. Sam looked stunned. I was Catherine Mills then. She explained, traveling west with my family when bandits attacked our wagon. A young cowboy happened by, risked his life to drive them off. I never got to thank him properly before my family moved on. I didn't even know his name until I married Theodore and heard him cursing about his rival, Sam McKenna. She turned to Sam. You saved me asking nothing in return. Let me return the favor. Judge Hartley, faced with overwhelming evidence and a courtroom full of witnesses, had no choice. The case was dismissed. Blackwood's claims declared fraudulent. Furthermore, criminal charges would be filed for the attempted intimidation and bribery. As the gavel fell, Blackwood lunged toward Sam with a snarl of rage. But Sam was ready. Despite his limitations, he brought his cane up sharply, catching Blackwood in the stomach and dropping him to the courtroom floor. That's for threatening Clara's family, Sam said quietly. The aftermath was swift. Blackwood was arrested on multiple charges. His wife filed for divorce, taking half his assets, which he promptly used to establish a fund for widows and children's aid. The territorial governor, embarrassed by the corruption exposed in his jurisdiction, promised a full investigation. But for Clara and Sam, none of that mattered as much as the moment they stood outside the courthouse, free and victorious. We did it, Clara breathed, hardly believing it was over. You did it, Sam corrected, pulling her close despite the public setting. You gave me the strength to fight, the reason to heal, everything. Sam McKenna, Clara said with mock sternness. Are you getting sentimental on me? Maybe I am. He cupped her face gently. Marry me. Clara, let's make this partnership official. Is that a proposal or a business proposition? She teased, though her eyes were bright with tears. It's everything, Sam said simply. It's acknowledging that you saved not just my body, but my soul. It's promising that whatever comes, good days or bad, walking strong or needing help, we face it together. It's saying that a broken-down cowboy loves you with everything he has. Then yes, Clara whispered. Yes to all of it? He kissed her there on the courthouse steps, in full view of half of Cheyenne, and Clara heard approving whistles from Jake and the other ranch hands. The journey home was different from the trip out, where there had been tension and fear. Now there was celebration. At every stop, word had already spread about the trial's outcome. Sam McKenna had not only survived, but triumphed. They were married a month later at the ranch, with Tom Garrett giving Clara away, and Jake Morrison standing as Sam's best man. The ceremony was held in the garden Clara had coaxed back to life, with wildflowers she'd transplanted from the meadows Elizabeth had loved. Sam stood throughout the ceremony. Steady and strong, he still used his cane, would probably always have a limp. But he was walking. More importantly, he was living fully and completely. That evening, as the ranch celebrated around them, Sam and Clara found a quiet moment on the porch. The sun was setting over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. You know what I realized today? Sam said, his arm around his new wife. What's that? Elizabeth would have loved you. She always said I needed someone who wouldn't let me get away with my stubbornness. Someone who'd challenge me to be better. Clara leaned into him. I think she sent me to you. That day I knocked on your door. Looking for work, it felt like destiny. The best kind of destiny, Sam agreed. The kind we choose to fight for. As if on cue, one of the newer ranch hands called out from the corral, "Mr. McKenna, that new mare's acting up again." Sam started to direct Tom to handle it, then stopped. "What do you think? Mrs. McKenna, shall we go see what the fuss is about?" "We shall," Clara agreed, standing and offering him her arm, not because he needed it, but because they were partners. They walked together toward the corral, Sam's gait still uneven but purposeful. The ranch hands parted respectfully, and Clara heard Jake murmur to a newcomer that there's the boss, fastest gun in 3 territories, smartest rancher in Wyoming, and the only man I know who beat death twice, once from that accident, and once from giving up. "And the woman?" the newcomer asked. "That's Mrs. McKenna. She's the one who reminded him how to fight." As they reached the corral, Sam paused, looking at Clara with such love it took her breath away. Then, so softly only she could hear, he whispered the words she'd once imagined. "You can walk again," the heart whispered as it healed not just my legs, Clara, but my whole life. "You gave me back my life." "No," Clara corrected gently. "We gave each other back our lives. That's what love does. It heals what's broken and makes us whole." The mare in the corral had settled, responding to Sam's steady voice and Clara's gentle touch. Around them, the McKenna ranch thrived, protected, valued, and led by a man who'd learned that true strength wasn't about standing tall, but about having the courage to rise after falling. As the stars began to appear over the Wyoming mountains, Sam and Clara McKenna stood together, proof that sometimes the greatest victories come not from never falling, but from finding someone who refuses to let you stay down. In the wild, unforgiving West, they discovered the most powerful force of all, a love that could heal both body and soul. Thank you for listening to this Wild West love story. I hope you enjoyed following Sam and Clara's journey from despair to hope, from brokenness to healing. Where are you listening to this story from? Please share in the comments below. I'd love to know where in the world these tales of the Old West are reaching. Don't forget to subscribe to From Wild West channel for more authentic frontier stories. And share your thoughts about Sam and Clara's romance. Did their love story touch your heart as much as it touched mine? Let me know in the comments.